Yo, what is going on, everyone? It is Professor Pierce here, PP for short. Today, I am going to tell you guys how to make a deck from scratch. Kind of my process through it and just what you need to know to be able to make a deck from scratch. Obviously, there's a lot of things that will help, like if you know what a certain card does already, but a lot of it in Pokemon, and as stupid as this is to say, is just reading the card. A lot of it just usually makes sense versus like in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic, it's kind of just a little crazy. Like you don't really know exactly what everything's going to do. So what I'm doing right here is I'm going through the list online of the cards I have, and what you can do is you can just look through what cards you have and start to pick out some staples. That's like the first thing that we're going to talk about here is like good staple cards for decks. Like this B-Barrel and Bidoof card, they're a really good staple card. Like because the B-Barrel helps you draw cards. If you have less cards than 5 in your hand, it helps you draw up to 5 cards in your hand. So it's good and important to know what staples are good for what decks, but in general there are staples for like every deck pretty much. And in that regard, this B-Barrel just happens to be good one of those. And you're probably asking like, okay, well, how do I know what are good staple cards? Obviously, I can't type out an entire list of what's a good staple card, but it goes back to the first thing of you are just gonna have to read a lot of cards first, and then once you get the feeling of what you think you know is a good card, if it sounds OP, it's probably pretty good. And if it has a lot of writing on it, like I'll explain later, or if it has a lot of conditions, usually it's not that great. Or if it's like something very specific for one specific scenario, usually it's also not that great either. So here I'm gonna make a Chi-Yu deck. I'm thinking that's the card I want to base everything around on. So that's why I went up to the filters up there and I selected fire, because I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I think I want to go with that, because usually you want to take a card and then base a whole deck around the card. So I'm like, okay, I want to do Chi-Yu. So then I clicked on the fire and I went to the filter, then clicked on the fire, and then now I'm clicking on some of these other cards. I'm reading through them. You can kind of tell what some of them do if you can read them fast enough. If I'm not going too fast for you, because I do go pretty fast. I usually don't have much of an intro because I feel like that wastes a lot of time. But that is just my personal opinion. But so I'm gonna look at this Heatran card for a second. Like you see how its ability is kind of really specific. It's like it heals only so many per turn. It's like that could be good, but you gotta base it around it. You gotta base it around the card. Plus, it has 4 retreat, so that's a lot of retreat. There's a lot of like things you gotta look at when you're looking for good cards. You gotta look at the HP, you gotta look at the retreat, you gotta look at the attack cost of cards, and of course, most importantly, you gotta look at the ability of cards. If they even have an ability, because like that B-Barrel I was talking about, it has, the only reason it's good is because of the ability. That's the only reason you play it. You don't play it for the attack. And you're probably asking yourself too, well, how do I know if the attack is good or not? And kind of like I said before, you just kind of have to read it and be like, okay, I saw this other Pokemon had an attack for 2 energy and it did 100 damage, like Chi-Yu does. And then this B-Barrel, that's a stage 1 Pokemon, has an attack for 3 energy and does 100 damage, but it could still just miss. So that's like definitely not good, because the cost of that isn't very good. So you just kind of have to like weigh cards against each other, kind of seeing like, okay, is this card better than this card, or does it make sense to play this? So So I'm just grabbing some other cards here that I know are good, but when you're looking through your list, you might not have some of these cards, or you might have different cards than me. So what I'm doing now is, I think I have enough Pokemon in my little deck here, so I'm kind of straightening out a little bit. And you're probably asking yourself too, well, how do I know I have enough Pokemon, or if I have too little or too many? Usually for Pokemon, you want from anywhere between like 8 and 15. Usually is a good number. Usually it kind of depends on what deck you're running. If you're running something, like you can run a lot of different things. Pokemon is really giving too with what you can run. There are decks that run a lot of Pokemon and work really well, and there are decks that run very little Pokemon and work very well. It kind of just depends on what you want. So I'm basically saying is there's not really a lot of wrong answers here, but usually between 8 and 15, I would say, is a pretty good spot. And like that Heatran card too, I was just trying to show you, is also not very good, because it has it also has 4 retreat for just a regular Pokemon, and it doesn't have a lot of HP, and its attacks take a lot of energy. As you start to look through all the cards, you'll really realize what is a good card or not. Like, what can do a lot of damage for very little energy is what ideally you would want. So let's see, what else we got here. So I'm looking at some of these other cards, saying like, what could be a staple. I've kind of got all my staples for this deck. The only real staple card for this deck would be the B-Barrel. But for Fire deck, this new Armarouge card that I looked up earlier is really good. He could be a staple for Fire, and because of his ability is really good too. He helps accelerate energy. And I'm looking at here this Rayquaza. Even though the Rayquaza requires electric energy, you can still run him in your deck because he has fire energy on him. And you're probably asking like, oh, well, that seems kind of, how do I know if I should put one of those cards in, put a water Pokemon in a fire deck or whatever? It kind of comes down to what energy they run, and if you think it's a good fit, because it's personally just up to you. There's not really a lot of wrong answers. But now we're gonna move into one of the most difficult parts of it, is the trainers, because the trainers you're gonna have the most of in your deck, and so that's really what helps the game flow, is trainer cards. So I'm kind of going back and forth to looking at a lot of the retreat cost of my Pokemon to see if this beach court card would be good for the deck or not. And I'm thinking it will be. I mean, a lot of my Pokemon only have 1 retreat, so if I can get rid of that 1 retreat, then they have free retreat. So moving on, and I'm gonna grab a couple other staples here. So like Boss's Orders is just a really good staple card you should know to have in a deck. You should usually just run 1 or 2 of these anyway. You can definitely run 3 or 4 in certain decks as well. But it's another good staple card to run. It's just super good. And then I'm looking back here to see some other things, to seeing if I got a lot of basic Pokemon, because this card right here helps me put extra HP on basic Pokemon. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I could definitely use that. Could definitely use that on my basic Pokemon, because if you have a bunch of evolution Pokemon, then there's no point to run a card like that. And For your trainer cards too, that's also kind of up in the air. How many you should have? You should probably have around 30. I want to say that would probably be on the lower scale. But like I said, it depends on how many Pokemon and how many energy you're running. Because if you're running a really heavy energy count, obviously that's gonna lower your trainers, or maybe lower your Pokemon. I'll talk more about that in a minute as we finish up the section. But right now I'm grabbing some other cards. I'm just kind of what I like to do too is when I'm starting to make a deck, I put a lot of ones in my deck. So like I pick a card and I put it in there. But real quick, I'm just gonna say, this is a good example of a card that has a lot of conditions, and it usually isn't that good. So like this card is definitely not very viable because it's so specific. But sometimes it's good to have a lot of conditions. Like for certain cards, you just gotta read the card, man. I mean, sometimes it's just that easy to figure out what it is. And I know it's difficult sometimes to just say, hey, just read every single card there is, and you'll know what to do. Yeah, like, that's kind of intimidating to say, needless to say. I already said that, but you know what I mean. But it's just something you'll get as you go on. Especially through the deck building process. So I'm going through and I'm putting some more one cards in here that are good, some more staple cards. Like this card, for example, it gets you whatever you want out of your deck, just like for a one-time thing. So being able to grab any card you want out of your deck pretty much at any time is usually really good. So that's definitely a card you would want more of, but you have to have a V Pokemon in there, a Pokemon V, to play that card onto, because that one's a tool card. So you got to make sure you have a Pokemon V for that card. So you can't just slam that into a deck with a bunch of EXs or a bunch of basic cards that aren't V Pokemon, because then the card won't be able to work. But you'll learn that as you read the card and you realize what it is. So moving along now, I'm putting some more staple cards in here. Like this is what we're running. You want to run in your fire decks. This is a very good staple card for fire decks only. And how you know that is by, you guessed it, reading the card. So in that case, there's not a lot of fire cards out there. Sorry, there's not a lot of fire support cards out there, but there's a couple out there, so you definitely want to use the ones available to you. So as you would go through, you'd be able to tell, like, okay, like you'll see in a minute, I looked up the word fire, and some stuff came up for that. So I could look up the word fire in this trainer's one and find all the ones that say fire. So that'd be a good way to see what cards need and use fire stuff. So I'm checking back through here a couple more things. A couple more good staple cards is what we're getting to soon. Like this card, Path to the Peak, is a good staple card for certain decks. What it does is it shuts off abilities for Pokemon with rule boxes. And rule boxes are like those really big Pokemon, like Pokemon V and Pokemon EX. So if you're running those Pokemon if you're running the Pokemon V and the Pokemon EX with abilities, then you probably don't want to use that card. You want to use other cards that are good at blocking that one. And another good staple card here is this card called Professor's Research. This is what we tell everyone that's trying to come into Pokemon is, come to Pokemon. We have Draw 7 here, because all the other card games are like, draw one, draw two, if draw two, type of thing. And we have draw 7 here, so that's what's that's just a good card to get you more cards in your hand, because it's important to draw cards in any card game usually, and especially in this one because you can draw so many and you don't have a hand size either, so you can have as many cards in your hand as possible up until you run out of cards in your deck. But see, now we're getting closer to the bottom. We're still picking some more cards. We're looking through. We're reading a couple of them. Another good staple card here is Switch, and also this new card that just came out is called Super Rod. It's also really important too because it throws cards back into your deck. So if you accidentally discarded something, or you had to discard something that you'll need later, you can throw it back right into the deck. And then Switch cards is also a good staple card, along with a lot of the ball cards are really good. So like earlier I had a Nest Ball, and then here I'm using Ultra Ball. These are really, really good staple cards. Like, you pretty much can throw these into any deck. They're pretty important for finding Pokemon you need, because you're not always gonna be able just to draw into them. You want to get them out of the deck when possible. So now we are down at the end of this list, and we see we have about 36 cards, give or take. But real quick too, this is another example of a bad card as well, is because it already has a condition, so you can only use it once at the beginning of the thing, at the beginning of your turn, beginning of the game, and it doesn't even really do a lot. As you can maybe read on the card, you can go back and pause on the card. It's a super niche card, and usually super niche cards aren't very good, like I was explaining earlier. So we still have 36 cards. Back to that, we have 36 trainer cards. So, God, I hate saying so many times because it sounds like I don't know what I'm talking about. But I 100% know what I'm talking about. Don't worry, I'm a professor. So here we go, we're moving on to the energies here. We want, obviously, our normal energy. Since I'm running a fire deck with Chi-Yu, I'm going to put fire energy in here. And so I'm putting the electric energy in here for that Rayquaza as you guys may have saw earlier, because he takes a couple electric energy. So I kind of want to put some in there to make sure he can attack, but everyone else just takes fire energy or takes colorless energy. So colorless energy could be any energy, so it doesn't matter what we use. So we're looking back here, so we're kind of seeing oh yeah, what I was gonna say was, I got off on the wrong path right there. I was talking about energy. So usually you want about 10 energy. Usually 10 is maybe a little high for some decks, but I would say anywhere between 6 and 12 energy is a good energy spot to be in. But 12 being kind of really high, and then 6 being pretty low. And another thing is, you need 60 cards for your deck. Up there above a couple of those things on the right side, it says 60 out of 60 now. Pokemon is something that is only 60 cards, so your deck can only be 60 cards. So you do have to kind of finagle your way to make it exactly 60 cards. As I was doing right there at the end, I was subtracting a couple cards that I didn't think I would use, and then putting in some cards that I think I would use more, and trying to get exactly 60 because it won't let you play otherwise. And so this client here, Pokemon Trading Card Game Online Live is what it's called. It is free, and that's where I'm using all this and testing all this stuff. And it'll give you cards for free as well. So if you want to test out stuff on here, that's what I'm doing. So once I made this deck, hit that test button. So I'm not actually facing a person, I'm just facing an AI. I'm not really trying to win or lose here. All I'm trying to do is test the hands. So what I mean by that is see if it's consistent. See if I'm going to draw a bunch of nonsense, or if I'm going to draw like better, or if I'll be able to get out certain cards. See if I made it well. So it's my turn, so we'll go ahead and use some of these ball cards I have here to get out some of my Pokemon. And so after that, we're going to see what else we're going to do here. We're going to use this on him and this on him because my Rayquaza evolves, so I don't want to use the other charm on him. And then what we'll do is we'll grab another Pokemon here. And we will use this basin because that's why we discarded that fire energy from earlier, so we can put it on him with the magma basin. And what we're doing here is we're just testing to see if things work. I mean, like, it seems like things are kind of flowing pretty well. We're not just stuck or anything like that. Yeah, so we're just gonna playing some cards. You know how it is. Even though we're just testing, we're just seeing how things flow. They're going well. So the opponent's gonna make his turn here, and I'm gonna talk a little bit more about what I think you should do while you're testing. So while you're testing, I think it's important to see what, identify your weaknesses and your boon. What's the opposite of your weaknesses? Your pros and your weaknesses, I guess. So in this case, I have a lot of stadiums. I'm realizing I have a lot of stadiums in this deck that I don't necessarily need. And I'm like, okay, yeah, because I know I want the 4 stadiums of the fire thing, but I don't necessarily think I'm using the other ones, so maybe I'll go down in stadiums. The same thing for this Rayquaza, for example. He's been stuck in the active. I haven't found the electric for him. I'm just thinking maybe he's not a good pick now. I haven't found the evolved version of him either. So I haven't even evolved him because I'm only running 1. So if I did want to run more than one thing, or more than one Rayquaza, then that might be a better idea. But it seems like that might not be the best idea. So I was getting distracted. But yeah, so we're just going to research here real quick and draw a bunch of these new cards here. And we will basin to here, and we finally found that electric energy, so we'll attach that to him eventually, to the Rayquaza. I'm trying to think what I should get rid of here, though. Probably, it's usually best to have a supporter in your hand, regardless. So we don't actually have the Armoroge in here, but we do have the Rayquaza. But now I don't know if I want to play him because I still can't get him out of the active spot, and if he dies, that's 3 prizes instead of 2 prizes. And the same thing here is discard the top 2 cards of your deck for only 20. I don't know if I want to do that. So I'm thinking I definitely want to take the Rayquaza out of here because it's kind of bulky. It's kind of not bulky, but I'm trying to think of the word. I mean, it is, not like bulky, like big, strong, but bulky, like clunky. That's the word I'm looking for. It's like clunky. So it's kind of making things difficult to set up here. So I definitely want to take him out, and you want to look for your pros. You want to see what's working, obviously. So it's kind of been hard to get anything done here, but the B barrel has been working. He's been set up. He's been helping me draw some cards here just in case. The Entei seems like it could be helping. This stadium seems like it's helping, so I may leave this stadium in here. So far the Chi-Yu hasn't been doing too much, but he certainly seems like he's helping us set up here. So you just want to identify your pros and cons of testing. And for the rest of this, I think I'm just going to narrate this. I mean, there's kind of not too much else I want to talk about specifically for this. So if you want to, you can skip ahead in the video till past this part, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what makes the deck list good or bad. But continuing on here, we are going to just attack here because we're just trying to, we're just trying to practice. So we're just trying to kill some stuff, see if it works or not. So we got this kill, we set up our Entei finally, and we finally taken a prize card here. And we get the Armorage, which is good. That's what we've been looking for this whole time. And he's going to attack and switch and boss out someone. Oh, he's gonna boss out Rayquaza again. Yeah, this thing's looking, more and more like a liability than a helper at this point. But we can finally use the Armorage here to use its ability, so we can take a Fire Energy and fire it off into our active slot. And then we can retreat with him. And then attack with our Entei here. Bam. I said bam. But you see, I said bam. Yeah. I was just trying to show you that, yeah, you don't always have to do something, because I have run out of cards pretty fast in my deck. So I definitely don't want to use its ability if I don't have to. So he's going to switch again, and then he's going to research, which is good. Yeah, they always draw 7. Like, see, it's even in the AI deck here that they have it. And then they're going to attack and kill us here, bonk, for like 1,000,000 damage. And take his prize cards, and we will you gotta think about it a little bit. So I can always retreat for free with the Chi-Yu, so that's why I was thinking about putting up the Heatran, but it's okay because I can always retreat with the Chi-Yu because of the Stadium card. So I'm gonna thin a little bit here to look for something. I'm gonna look for the Delphox here, because I want that on my bench as well. And then we'll play a Stadium. I mean a supporter, not a Stadium. Oh, crazy. And we'll just play this, get it out of my hand. And we might as well use it. Because, yeah, it's definitely in this case, it's definitely... I was looking for an energy, so that's why I, turboed my deck so fast. So I could attack and kill this thing so fast. But you got to be careful, though, because you don't want to run out of cards. Because if you do run out of cards, then you lose. And we found another Armorage. Yeah, they were both in there. We just got kind of screwed with that. So the Armorage is definitely helping. So you can definitely tell that is helping because of we are able to accelerate a lot of extra energy to our active Pokemon to retreat it at the moment. So we definitely want to keep those guys in there, along with the B-Barrel. We know we want to keep in there, and the Chi-Yu was doing a lot of extra help and some damage So we want to keep that in there. The Heatran, he's been doing all right so far. He hasn't been failing us or anything like that. And we'll probably take out, like I said before, take out the Rayquaza, and then take out the electric energies, and that should free us up some slots for some stuff too, which will be nice. Which should be nice. So we're getting close to the end. There's our other electric energy that we haven't even needed to use yet. So here's what I'm gonna do here. I'm just gonna attack and hope we can kill this thing before we run out of cards. But it seems like they got nothing either, because they turboed themselves. But we drew a boss, so what we can do here is we can retreat and then attack with the Delphox and boss out something else too. This is a pretty cool play, because then we can do 120 and 120 to something. We do 120 to the active and then 120 to something else. But since they have their bird's ability, they're going to only do 100 here. But it's alright, because we can still do enough damage to kill him. Alright, so there we go. So take that prize card. And we'll take the other prize card. So that's just testing, you know, seeing what works, your pros and cons. Now that we're back at this stage, we can kind of look through it a little bit better and see what we don't want to do. So I'm going to take out the electric. I'll probably take out both, but I want to see if, because we could take out the Heatran for another card for the Radiant Charizard we could put in here instead. That's kind of up to each person. But we'll go ahead and take out the Rayquaza, so then we'll go ahead and take out the electric energy as well. And then we can have some extra slots here. So, like I said, you don't necessarily need 16 Pokemon or 14 Pokemon in a deck. So I might just add some extra stuff to the trainers here. And I'm going to take out one of those Path to the Peaks too, because I was saying I probably have too many stadiums. So it's alright. And we were screwed with finding stuff in our prizes, and we have a lot of basics. So I'm going to put a heavy ball in here. I was thinking about that during the game. So I definitely want that, and it'll be nice to be able to get something out of our prizes here. And trying to think what else. I mean, everything else is good. I mean, we can run another supporter. Just, you know, more cards that we can use for the trainers, because usually you want. I mean, you're definitely needing more trainers than Pokemon or energy, and but I'm gonna see here what we got. And this is another. This isn't by any means a staple card. This is more like a tech card. I'm gonna put this one in here just for little S and G. I'm trying to think of the abbreviation. It took me a little longer than I wanted to think. But little S and G. So you can put that in there. You can think about it. You know, you can put whatever else in you wanted. It doesn't really matter too much, because you know, it's your deck list at the end of the day, and you can keep testing and tweaking it and see if it works. Also, another thing you can do, which is pretty nice, is you can just ask people. If you see at your locals what people are running, you can just ask them. It's like, oh, you know, what does that card do? I mean, most people in Pokemon are very chill, are very nice. especially in my locals. I mean, everyone is just like super nice. It's super easy to ask people questions, to get along. No one's gonna be like, oh my god, what are you doing? What's that? You know, what does this card do? What, you should know what it does, or like anything stupid like that. Everyone's very open. Feel free to ask around. You know, ask them if they got trades. You know, maybe you can trade some stuff, or you can obviously just buy the card off of them or something like that if they're willing to do that with you. You'll learn a lot that way too. Just you know, with human interaction. I know that's pretty scary to some people, but that's a good way to be able to see what cards do and know how good cards are, is by seeing other people play them. Yeah, that's about more or less all the advice I think I have. So go forth and attempt to create a deck. I hope this at least helped a little bit. If it didn't, I'm so sorry. Why are you still watching? Go ahead and click off. But yeah, thank you. Just remember, subscribe, you know, like the videos, all that nonsense that people say that really makes people want to do that for some reason. No, I'm just kidding. I know it really doesn't. If anything, it does the opposite. But I need to say it. Please! Please! No, I'm just... Okay. Okay, that's it. Bye. Thank you.